What's up, Leafs fans? Welcome back to Leafs Digest. More Leafs news, rumors, trade talks. They are all starting to heat up right now as the trade deadline approaches about a month away from today. And things are getting interesting around Leafs Nation. Which players they are interested in, which players they're targeting. Things are starting to get spicy around Leafs Nation. So we are here to break it all down. But before I get into that, I want to remind everyone that we are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, make sure you do so. There's a little incentive built into this one. Josh and I have already promised that we will be growing out our hair until the playoffs. And if we hit that 2,000 subscriber mark before playoffs, the boys will be rocking mullets through the entire playoffs. So if this is something you want to see happen, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. Support this channel. We thank you guys so much. Now, getting into today's news, I mean, it broke yesterday, broke today. But first things first, I've got to give credit to the Leafs Digest live chat on our live stream the other day after the game. The Leafs chat was going nuts talking about Luke Schenn. If this is a guy we should be pursuing, if this is a guy they were interested in, a guy they wanted to bring back to this team. Now, Josh and I thought about it a bunch. We talked about it on the live stream about Luke Schenn, his potential fit, what he ended up being traded for when he left this Leafs team. And I mean, it was something we speculated about and thought, okay, maybe. Then reports break from Rick Dhaliwal from the Donnie and Dhali Show saying that some believe that the Toronto Maple Leafs have interest in defenseman Luke Schenn. So now I don't know if they're pulling this one from our Leafs Digest live chat. Maybe. So credit to you guys for saying that first, for showing that interest. But let's get into this one. Luke Schenn reuniting with the Toronto Maple Leafs is a very, very interesting topic. He was drafted 5th overall in the 2008 NHL entry draft by the Toronto Maple Leafs, played here for a couple of years before he was traded 1-for-1 in a deal to Philadelphia for James Van Riemsdyk. Now, we all know at that time, it was an incredible trade for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He came here, JVR came here, he was an incredible goal scorer, and he's a guy who Leafs fans, for the most part, were huge fans of. What he was able to do, how good he was at scoring. James Van Riemsdyk was a loved player here in Toronto, and that trade worked out well for us. He ends up moving on back to Philadelphia, and next thing you know, here we are sitting breaking down rumors that Luke Schenn might be coming back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Kyle Dubas and management might have interest in him. He's been having a good year in Vancouver this year. I mean, you look at since he left Philadelphia, since he left Toronto, he played for Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Arizona, Vancouver, Tampa, and now he's back to Vancouver. He won 2 Stanley Cups with Tampa. He played in 11 games in the first Cup run, 8 games in the second Cup run. He was a guy who was relied upon as a 7/6 defenseman. He would get into games here and there. He could play minutes. He was trusted by the coaching staff, hence them keeping him around through both runs and actually trusting putting him in games to help them win. He's a guy who can kill penalties. He's defensive minded. He's a big body with a long stick, 6'2", 220 pounds. And the most important thing here, Leafs fans, right shot, right defenseman, 850K AAV. And I think the more I look into this one, it checks all of Kyle Dubas's boxes. He's got a little bit of term left because he's got this year and next year on the deal. Plus, you add in the fact that he's 850K AAV. He's going to slide into this cap nicely. He's not going to have to push a whole bunch of other guys out in order for him to fit into this lineup. 850K is a very, very manageable contract, whether you move guys up or down or if you trade guys out of this system, out of this organization. He's easy to fit into here. But then the bonus of all of this is the right shot, right defenseman who could play as your number 6 and wouldn't be relied upon any further than number 6. He could be a guy who's your 7 and slots into 6 as well, but he's another guy who could add depth to this defensive core. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. He's been there before, and he's familiar with the city of Toronto. This seems like it could be a good fit. On top of all this, he's having a pretty good year in Vancouver so far this season. I mean, you look at his stats, he's got 10 points, 3 goals, 7 assists in 32 games played with the Canucks this year. He's having a pretty good season on a not-so-great team. He's managing to get by and still put up a little bit of points for a guy who's a defensive-minded defenseman playing lower down in the depth over there. And he'd be relied upon a little bit less here in Toronto, so maybe a little bit of pressure could come off of him, and he could just focus on defense here. The best part about this, in my opinion, is that he could be a stabilizing factor, and at a right shot, it is just even better. He's a guy who could slot in with Jake Muzzin or Rasmus Sandin. You move them around. You could even put Hall up with Muzzin if he remains in this lineup after a trade for Luke Schenn gets done. He slides in with Muzzin. They solidify some things there. You move Hall down to the 6. He doesn't have to play as many minutes. There's a lot of options, but him being a right-handed shot, him being a guy who's been around the NHL for a long time, and a guy who's won Stanley Cups is just a good character, veteran guy to bring in here, and he's a guy who's very, very serviceable. I wouldn't want to put him past the 6th spot, but he could if necessary. I think the added bonus of being a right shot is the biggest benefit here, especially when we look at a lot of these potential trade targets that are being talked about at this point, all these reports out there. A lot of the guys are fitting in as a lefty, or we're trying to find a guy who's not that great and he's on a 1-year deal and he's soaking up $1.5 million, $2 million of this salary cap. Luke Schenn could be the ideal fit here. I mean, you look at how he's played in Vancouver this season. He's getting into a lot of games. We're not going to rely on him for too much, but he could be a reliable guy to come here, and I think that at a 6th spot, you're not going to be asking too much of him. I also think the best part, or one of the better parts about this, is that if you can slide him into the 6th, it helps solidify some things a little bit more moving forward, closer to the trade deadline or after the trade deadline, where if you acquire a guy like Luke Schenn, you're not going to be looking further past to add much more significant pieces. Kyle Dubas alluded to it in his media availability the other day that he's looking to see what guys like Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren can do, and if they can move up into this lineup, maybe Sandin takes over the 3 spot, and then you put a right D with him on the 4. You can move some guys around and have your own internal self-promotions that take over some of these spots. If Rasmus Sandin over the next little while leading up to the trade deadline shows that he's a guy who can play in the top 4, maybe you're not looking for a top 4 defenseman anymore. Maybe at that point, a 6 guy is all you need. And if you can find a 6 at $850K, maybe you shed some salary trading out a Dermott. You're looking at a good spot here. You're looking at a good position. And then the other thing to this is adding him in there takes a little bit of pressure off of Timothy Liljegren and Justin Hall, whichever one of them ends up sticking around after this trade deadline and stays in this lineup, because a guy like Luke Schenn and his veteran ability, his veteran leadership, he's been around, he's won the Cups, he knows what it's like to play in these playoff games, in these important games. He can take on a little bit more of that role and take some of that pressure away from those 2 guys, one being very young, one who's had a struggling season so far. He could take some of that pressure off of them, play a little bit more time, push some of those guys further down into the lineup, or just take away some of the minutes from them, even if they remain at the 4. So, I mean, if you're looking at a situation where Luke Schenn slides into your 6, you could end up with a 6 defenseman of Morgan Rielly, TJ Brodie, Jake Muzzin, Justin Hall, Rasmus Sandin, Luke Schenn, and I think that looks just as good, if not better, going forward. But the best part about it is if you can ship out a guy like Travis Dermott, you keep Liljegren as a 7. You could interchange Liljegren and Schenn moving forward, or you could bump Liljegren up, move some of the pairs around. Maybe you go Sandin Liljegren, Muzzin Schenn, and some things start to balance out. And the other thing to this is that Schenn could potentially balance out Muzzin's struggling season and bring him back down to earth and help him out there. Leafs fans, let me know what you think about this Luke Schenn trade. If you think this is a good idea for the Leafs, if they should pursue it, if you want to see Luke Schenn here, and if not, let me know in the comments your thoughts on this one. But Leafs fans, I just want to remind you before we go, get us to that 2K mark, and the boys will be rocking mullets for the playoffs. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, like and comment on this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys tonight after the Calgary Flames game, 9 p.m. See you guys then. Keep believing.